Chapter 4. Blood Money. Jason clasped the rearview mirror with his cartoonishly large right hand and slanted it downward. After a quick glance, he said, "Boss, I think we got company." Dirk instinctively looked back and flipped his sunglasses on the back of his head. Dirk stared down the abusing vehicles and said, "We have a tail, all right." "How far, boys?" Maddox asked. Jason took some chewing tobacco out with his left hand and gripped the wheel with his right hand. "Eyes on target. 100 yards of closing. About 4 cars back. What am I doing here, boss?" Jason asked while fondling his .45. "Change lanes. Make it obvious," Maddox said. Jason slammed on the brakes and switched over to the left adjoining lane. As we changed lanes, the SUV followed in kind, but in a much less abrupt manner. We got a cool customer here," Jason said. Dirk drew his .45 caliber revolver from his waistband, just one of the many firearms he concealed on his person, and pointed it over the back seat of the approaching SUV. Luckily for us, our SUV was covered in black, limo tint windows. "What am I doing, boss?" Dirk asked. "Keep your pants on, Dirk. Just drive. Act normal. It's probably just an advanced security detail for the shot caller. Don't pop off just yet," Maddox explained with a calm precision. The team drove for another 10 or 15 minutes, slowly meandering towards the general direction of the meet site. The SUV was stuck on them like a cheap suit on a cop. Jason kept his cool, typical Jason. He rolled down the window and spit some of his chew out. Most of the chew flung off into the rear driver's side window. It was a rather disgusting habit, but it calmed his nerves. "Boss, these guys are still on us. Want me to lose them?" Jason asked politely and casually. Clearly, he was starting to get impatient with Maddox's conservative indecision. Jason looked in the mirror at Maddox and then over to Dirk. "Burn 'em," Maddox said. "Buckle up," Jason said with a smile. Dirk clicked the safety back on his revolver and tucked it into his waistband. They each strapped on their belts and held on for dear life. Jason slammed on the brakes and drifted into an alleyway like a Tokyo rice rocket. The other SUV lazily rolled down the road and noticeably gave up its pursuit. That was easy," Dirk said in a slightly disappointed tone. "Yes, it was," Maddox replied while keeping a watchful eye on the side mirror. "Yeah, a little too easy," Jason said, equally as disappointed as Dirk. Jason pulled the car over a few blocks down the road. We slowly came to a stop, and Dirk asked, "Are we there yet?" Jason just shook his head. "It comes with the territory." Jason and Maddox served multiple deployments in Afghanistan, Iraq, and who knows how many private security details. Dirk was plucked straight out of the Ranger Corps. "I'm waiting on a confirmation from the contact," Maddox said. Jason kept his hands on 12 and 2 with his head on the swivel. The 3 mercenaries waited eagerly for rendezvous point. Dirk started tapping his hands on his kneecaps like a drummer who couldn't find his rhythm. "Ding, ding. Meet at the Montauk Harbor in 45 minutes, the text message read. "Montauk Harbor? Boys, double time it," Maddox shouted. Maddox vigorously started typing back. "How do you expect us to make the trip in 45 minutes? "With fancy driving skills like that, I have the utmost faith in your abilities," the text read. We drove like a bat out of hell, and before we knew it, there was a Montauk Harbor. It wasn't much to look at. The trio was thoroughly unimpressed with the meeting spot, though it wasn't the shadiest place to meet. It had a small-town feel to it. Jason slowed his approach and started scoping out his exits. "Boss, this is a hell of a place to do business," Jason said sarcastically. What he probably meant to say is that this place was a great place to get ambushed. "No kidding. One way in, one way out. I love it. Just like the OK Corral," Dirk said in a cocky tone of voice. "Don't worry so much. We're stateside meeting with a civilian contractor. What could possibly go wrong?" Maddox asked. "Yeah, I don't like it. Reminds me of that job we did in Karachi," Jason protested. It was just past dark, but the harbor was oddly emptied out for this time of day. We parked the car in a very open part of the parking lot. We had our veritable pick of the litter when it came to parking spaces. The parking lot was at the end of a long gated entryway that was adjacent to the docks. Dirk couldn't wait to get out of the car and stretch his legs. He jumped out as soon as the car stopped moving. Jason took a second to adjust the mirrors and scout out some escape routes. They all got out of the car and waited in the middle of the parking lot. and waited. And waited some more. "What's the deal?" Dirk said. "Boss, you know this guy or what?" Jason inquired. "Only by reputation," Maddox replied. The mercenaries sat there for about 3 hours. It was like watching a bunch of used car salesmen waiting for a customer to show up on the car lot. The contact simply went by the name Billy. A mutual friend recommended them to Maddox and heard Billy was looking for some discreet, low-budget operators. He also heard Maddox's team was stateside looking for work. Jason strolled the docks, constantly scoping out for any indication Billy was actually going to show up. Jason found refuge squatting on the top of the storage container to get some kind of overwatch. Dirk was sitting on the dock of the bay, skipping rocks into the ocean. Maddox was just content watching the boats float on by and waiting for the inevitable arrival of the contact. Dirk sprouted up, made his way back to the car, slammed his hands on the hood. "Boss, let's get out of here. This guy ain't gonna show. We got played." "Hey!" Jason let out a large howling whistle and hopped down from the empty storage container. A plume of dust shot up as he landed. He must have been weighing in close to around 300 pounds these days. "Boss, 12 o'clock. Look sharp. We got company." "Talk to me," Dirk said as he started scanning the main drag. 3 extra-large black luxury-type SUVs, 400, 500 yards out, coming in hot, Jason explained. Dirk jumped up on the hood of the car to get a better look. He put one hand over his brow and another around the handle of the nickel-plated 1911 tucked into his waistband. "Calm the fuck down," Maddox ordered the oafish mercenary after their last job. Running point on a security detail in Sierra Leone. Maddox could tell. It took a toll on Jason and Dirk. Operating stateside was just the change in pace that the team needed. As far as Maddox knew, this was some cushy security detail for a spoiled billionaire defense bro. The SUVs rolled up and hard braked about 10 feet from the team. The SUVs encircled the team like a crescent moon. A small, unassuming man hopped out of the back seat of the forward vehicle. He was about 5 feet 5 inches, had a shiny bald cul-de-sac on top of his head, and thin framed wire reading glasses. "Ah, the Three Musketeers, on guard," Billy said as he put his fist up and play punched at the team. He did that awkward back-and-forth fencing-style punch routine, typical corporate stooge kind of bullshit. Jason scoffed and looked away. Dirk snickered and played along for a moment. Maddox stood stoic, but eager to strike up the conversation. "Man, you guys wound up tighter than a garter belt around the minister's daughter. What's the matter?" Billy inquired. Jason stepped forward closer to the shot collar. He took about 3 long strides and asked, "What's the matter? We've been waiting here for 3 fucking hours. What's the job?" Billy smiled and asked, "Didn't your mother ever teach you that good things come to those who wait?" Maddox placed a hand on Jason's shoulder. It was a subtle way to let Jason know to calm the fuck down. Maddox had a distinctive grip, like a parent redressing their spoiled child. "Now, which one of you is the famous Mad Dog Maddox, I wonder?" Billy inquired to the group of mercenaries. Jason and Dirk both simultaneously pointed at Maddox, and Maddox stepped into the forefront of the trio. Maddox wasn't shy about being the team lead, nor sheepish when it came to stepping into the hot zone. The way Maddox figured it, it came with the territory. "Ah, you're Mad Dog Maddox," Billy said with a slightly disappointed tone of voice. "I go by Maddox, just Maddox, and that must make you Billy the Kid, I take it?" Maddox asked. Billy simply beamed and smiled back at Maddox without answering the mercenary's inquiry. He stood there with his big, goofy look on his face, like a person who didn't know how to take a joke, but smiled anyways. There was this long, awkward pause, only to be characteristically interrupted by Dirk. "Let's get down to business, shall we?" Dirk asked. Dirk had his hands around his waist, Jason with his hands firmly tucked into his armpits. Billy continued. "Ah, yes. Your reputation precedes you. You guys really don't mess around. I like that. Just the kind of team we need for this job. A team with true grit and moxie for days." Billy smiled and pulled out a stick of bubblegum like a kid in a candy store. He wadded it up and started obnoxiously chewing it. He discarded the wrapper on the ground and started sizing up the team. Dirk slowly moved his head to the right, looking for any kind of cue from Maddox. Maddox was stone cold. Dirk refocused his concentration on the other vehicles. We're running a series of external safety audits for one of our top facilities. The contract is up for renegotiation. Congressional oversight and whatnot. Look, don't worry about the nitty-gritty, Billy explained hastily. What's the job? Maddox asked. Billy snapped his fingers and one of his large goons stepped out of the SUV holding a titanium-plated briefcase. His bodyguard had two large bulges, one on each side of his chest. Clearly this guy was packing some serious hardware. The goon handed each of the team members a large manila file folder, which had a mission dossier. The job is building 257, Billy explained to the curious operators. A look of confusion and ignorance overwhelmed the team. The curiosity got the better of them, and each team member opened up the mission dossier for further inspection. Huh. Plum Island? Maddox reacted after reading the first page of the dossier. Come on, Dirk said jokingly. Jason threw his hands up and walked around in a small circle. He put his hands on his waist and started kicking the gravel in the parking lot, kind of like a child waiting for his parent to pick him up from school. You want us to invade Plum Island? Jason asked. No. Nothing so serious. Nothing so official. Nothing so dramatic. We want you to participate in a minor stress test on the facility, infrastructure, and defense capabilities. Our security contract is in jeopardy. Nowadays, everyone wants to cut the defense budget. For this, that, or the other reason. It's the trendy thing to do in Congress. It really earns you a lot of brownie points with Joe Schmo, concerned citizen. Somehow, Congress got this idea that you have to be a complete idiot to invade Plum Island. So why bother spending taxpayer dollars protecting it? Wonder how they got that bright idea, Dirk asked sarcastically. What's the job, Billy? Maddox asked. Dirk shook his head and hurled his cigar into the river. Billy grinned and tipped his $1,000 oval-shaped aviator sunglasses down onto the brim of his nose. Like I said, this is a simple job. We need to test the facility security, blah, 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 Billy explained nonchalantly. Why do I get the distinct feeling you're not telling us everything? Jason asked the contractor. Billy stroked his dainty beard and said, This job is right up your alley. It's a simple snatch and extract. Nothing simple when you're talking about infiltrating a government bioweapons lab, Maddox interjected, let alone a facility on an island, Maddox said while perusing the dossier. Who's the target? Dirk asked. It's not who, it's what, Billy replied. Maddox glanced to his right to gauge Jason's expression. Jason had the dossier folded up under his armpit. Maddox swiveled over to the left, and Dirk had his hand around his waist. Clearly, neither one of them was thrilled with the assignment. What's the target? Jason asked. Billy scoffed at the question. How uncharacteristic for a merc. What do you care? I care because I need to know the transport protocols, Jason explained. Not too serious, Billy said. From my understanding, the only thing they deal with on Plum Island is Category A bioweapons, Maddox said. Jason and Dirk both looked over at Maddox in amazement. Neither man had experience handling biological contagions. Yes, that is mostly correct, Billy replied. Mostly, the trio said in unison, like a barbershop quartet singing around a bonfire. The facility is carrying a relic, a throwback experiment from World War II. Albumin, Billy explained. Billy trailed off for dramatic effect. It worked, because Dirk jumped in on him. Why are you saying that like we know what that is? Dirk asked. Jason pulled Maddox in close and whispered, It's harmless. Albumin is basically just a protein in your blood. Billy started a slow, ironic golf clap, and a shit-eating grin beamed across his face. Billy was still obnoxiously chewing his bubble gum. From the looks of it, the gum was some kind of nicotine-laced chewing gum. Congratulations, Jason. You can read the dossier, Billy said while sarcastically clapping. I was a combat medic for 6 years, you asshole. Of course I know what albumin is. Jason belligerently said to Billy. 3 other bodyguards jumped out of the SUVs, each of which carrying Russian-made AK-47s. The team didn't flinch. It was just precaution. Nothing to worry about. Jason wasn't easily intimidated, but checked his tone out of respect. Jason, do us all a favor and keep reading the dossier, Billy said politely. Well, it's not just albumin. It was an experimental batch of albumin mixed with jonane, testosterone, and adrenaline in order to create. Jason read aloud to the group and stopped abruptly at the drug's stated purpose. Jason looked up at Billy with his bewildered expression on his face. All of the color drained from his face. That's right. It's not a typo. Read it, Billy explained. To create a super soldier serum, Jason said. Bingo. The chemical was delightfully named the SSS-1. Give the Army creativity points on that one. Am I right? This all seemed rather fantastical in nature to them. A defense contractor wanted us to invade an island in order to justify his bloated defense contract and somehow make out with a 60-year-old super soldier serum? I know what you're thinking. Sneak into a secret military BSL-4 bioweapons lab, snatch an archaic super soldier serum, and find a way back to the mainland without a scratch? Sounds impossible, right? Billy asked. I mean, yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking, Maddox responded. Look, this is just a stress test on our security. You sneak into the facility with some kind of beach incursion, or better yet, a wrecked boat off the coast of Plum Island. 2 of you distract the gods, which operate on a skeleton crew over the weekend. And 1 of you find a way into the lab. Snatch the SSS-1. By the time the Coast Guard shows up to rescue the crew, you'll make out like bandits, Billy casually explained to the operators, like someone explaining the parking situation at a rock concert. Other than skeleton crew of security guards, what are we talking about? What's the head count? Maddox asked. There's about 400 staff on the island. A normal weekend, probably a quarter of that figure at best. The island is over 800 square miles. For the most part, people should be pretty well spread out. Remember, the island is just a facade. The weapons laboratory goes well below the surface of the earth, Billy explained. You want one of us to sneak past 100 or so people on an island that is 800 square miles? Dirk asked with some hesitancy. Trust me, it'll be easier than you think. The facility was originally built some 70 or so years ago. Over that time, there was a patchwork of lazily put together security features. I mean, the infrastructure is old as dirt, Billy explained. What kind of resistance can we expect? Dirk asked. On the water, there's a single Coast Guard patrol of the island by boat, Billy explained. 1 boat patrol? Are you serious? Dirk asked. Yes, a single patrol boat after hours, Billy replied somewhat menacingly. A single boat patrol guarding a BSL-4 weapons lab? Jason asked. Just 1, on mainland America. The government is barely functional on the weekend. Mind you, that is during normal time. When you ship out tonight, we're expecting hurricane-like winds and waves up to 15 feet. Odds are, there might not even be a single patrol out tonight, Billy replied. The team started slowly shaking their heads in agreement. Maddox was on the fence. Dirk was gung-ho about the mission, and Jason wasn't convinced. Jason was inherently skeptical of this entire situation. Tell us about the security force on the island. How do we beat it? Maddox asked. In the dossier, you have a complete blueprint of the island, including the facility layout. See those red X's on the blueprint? Billy asked. The team nodded in confirmation. Those X's are the approximate locations of security guard towers, various security posts on the island, Billy explained. There's a large cluster of buildings on the northeast side of the island. What is that? Jason asked. That? Oh, that's nothing. That's an abandoned facility.
It's an old fort. Don't worry about that. The main facility is located on the west side of the island. It is imperative that you land on the west side of the island, Billy explained.
I mean, I'd be a fool not to ask. Why does that matter where we make landfall? Dirk asked.
The east side of the island has uncontrollable storm swells at night. You'll capsize and die, that's why. The west side is the only vector to approach that doesn't result in your death, but will result in a plausible rescue scenario, Billy explained.
Okay, how do we get there? Jason asked.
Well, we're at the marina, full of fishing boats. Use your imagination. I don't know, be creative, Billy explained.
You expect us to ship out from here? Jason asked.
That's why I'm paying top dollar. Flip to the final page of the dossier, Billy explained.
The team scurried to the back page of the dossier, like a bunch of kids skimming pages to see how a book ended.
Each of you will be paid the sum of $150,000 in cash for a successful completion of tonight's mission. That includes some additional hazard pay as needed, Billy explained.
What if we get compromised? Jason asked.
I'm paying you not to get compromised, Billy replied.
Yeah, but what if we do? Dirk asked.
I know. This is a lot to think about. But this is a rush order, and I was told you were the best low-budget operators this side of Eastern Seaboard. How about you guys think it over? I'll need an answer by, let's say, 10 minutes, Billy explained while looking down his wristwatch.
Well, if you don't mind then, I'd like to discuss it with my compatriots, Maddox said while walking away. Billy smiled and started walking backwards towards his SUV. For what the team could tell, he was just content staring up small talk with his bodyguards while they thought over the proposition. The trio circled up the best they could and whispered among themselves about the mission. Boss, I don't like it, Jason said. Dirk looked at Jason like he must have been crazy to pass this up. As far as Dirk was concerned, this was a lottery ticket.
Jason, are you fucking high? We're talking about a lot of money here, Dirk explained.
Maddox didn't want to interject too quickly into the conversation. Maddox always let Dirk and Jason air out their feelings before stepping in to make a decision.
Boss, we need this. I need this, Dirk explained desperately.
Why would this guy shell out $450,000 to complete strangers? Jason asked.
The U.S. government spends around $600 billion a year on defense-related spending. Whatever he is paying us is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money he stands to make re-up in the security contract for the island, Dirk explained. Jason moaned and groaned for a second, only to be broken by Maddox. Jason, is it doable? Maddox asked. Jason took a second to stroke his beard, one of his more rugged and charming features. His beard was oiled like a well-tuned classic muscle car getting prepped for an auction. Doable? Yeah. Advisable? No, Jason explained. All I'm asking is how. How would you do it? Maddox asked. Jason started rubbing the top of his head to ponder the question. Like a bowler polishing a bowling ball, Jason had a perfectly round and shiny bald head. The fading sunlight beamed a yellow tint from his forehead. Sweat droplets began to form around the edges of his sunglasses. Jason was one of the most patient marksmen in the world. He once held a sniper's nest for 5 days, waiting for a target to come out of his compound. Jason excelled at soldiering and long-range combat, but where he really excelled was during the planning phase of a mission. His approach was always methodical, and Maddox appreciated the level of stewardship. If we had to do it, we steal one of these fishing boats, preferably one of the boats that has a decent global positioning system. Visibility is going to be a problem, and we don't want to get turned around in this mess. One wrong turn could capsize this boat and put us upstream without a canoe. We pack up small arms, nothing heavy. We'll have to conceal everything in our wetsuits, which is not going to be easy. I'm thinking maybe some 9mm sissy pistols, and 1 or 2 tranquilizer guns. Packing light is the only way to avoid suspicion. We can take out some of the lone guards and acquire their munitions as we go further and further into the facility, Jason explained. See, there we go. No problem, Dirk said. Breaching the facility will be the easy part, Dirk. The real challenge with our boat capsize is how in the fuck do we get home, Jason said. Both men looked at Maddox for the answer. Maddox was fixing on a possible solution like an octopus trying to open a seashell. I've got that covered, Maddox said. The fuck does that mean? Jason asked. It is easy. We'll steal the boat from the Coast Guard, Maddox explained. The trio of mercenaries burst out laughing in unison. The mercenaries figured this was an elegant solution to a complex problem. Jason, if you're not okay with this, let's just walk, Maddox said. Jason thought it over, looked at Dirk, looked at Maddox, and begrudgingly started nodding his head. What followed was a brief moment of moans, grunts, and sighs. Fuck it, I'm in, Jason capitulated. Maddox put his 2 fingers in his mouth and made a walloping whistle to get Billy's attention. They started walking towards each other and stopped about 6 feet apart. Well, what's the verdict? Billy said. We're in, Maddox said on behalf of the crew. I knew I could count on you, Billy replied bombastically. Billy snapped his fingers and one of his goons came running over with a briefcase in hand. Just one more thing, Billy said as he handed the briefcase over to Maddox. And that is, Maddox said while opening the case. Jason looked over as the case opened and started laughing at the contents. Here it comes, Jason said to Dirk. All you can bring is 1 tranquilizer gun and plastic knives, Billy explained. Maddox shook his head in disbelief and said, Sorry, did you say a single train gun? Jason interrupted and asked, Sorry, did you say plastic knives? Yeah, but they're hard plastic. Ha! Part of our updated security is a new state-of-the-art metal detection system. This tranquilizer gun is plastic and pump action, no metal, no gunpowder. In theory, you should be just fine passing through security. Billy rationalized to the group. Dirk took off his baseball cap and ran his fingers through his long wavy hair. He was quick on the draw, kind of a cowboy, yet even he had his misgivings about this mission. Dirk tied back his ponytail. He put the cap back on and tucked the ponytail in the rear opening of his ball cap. His nervousness caught Maddox's eye. Maddox was getting the feeling Dirk was gung-ho, but was starting to get a case of buyer's remorse. Jason started spitting his chew on the ground and made a subtle groaning sound. I trust we all made the right decision, Billy said almost questioningly with a downward inflection. Through and through, Billy was a sleazy salesman masquerading in a 3-piece suit. Billy looked at each of the mercenaries for confirmation that the job was still on, followed by him abruptly shutting the briefcase and handing it over to Maddox. Billy had his arm almost fully extended, dangling the briefcase in front of Maddox. Maddox stared at the briefcase with this intense glare. Maddox was solely fixated on the briefcase like a stockbroker staring at a bag of cocaine. The briefcase represented a hell of a lot more to Maddox than just accepting the job. This briefcase was a down payment on a house. This briefcase was a new ex-wife. This briefcase was a fresh start. The briefcase started to tremble in Billy's outstretched, stubby excuse of an arm. Billy clearly hadn't exercised in some time, and as the briefcase shook, his face began to turn red, like a vine-ripened Roma tomato. Billy clenched onto the briefcase and started to lower it. Just as it began to fall, Maddox stepped in and clamped onto the briefcase with both hands. Maddox stuck out a hand to shake on the deal. Billy smiled and latched onto Maddox's hand to acquiesce. Billy had some small, girly hands just like Maddox. Maddox noticed almost immediately how clammy Billy's hands were. It was almost like clasping onto a dead fish. Maddox tried to remain as externally professional as possible and keep up a good poker face. No matter how uncomfortable the handshake, no matter how uncomfortable the meeting place, no matter how challenging the job looked on paper, Maddox was determined to knock this one out of the park and make a cool 6-figure payday for the crew.